Game optimization, the process of making a game playable by reducing unwanted objects, effects, removing details and despawning them when not needed, using LODs, estimated calculations, etc. In order to make a game playable for most computers and consoles, game optimization is a must, as it allows the game to efficiently use the power of the hardware and avoid any unnecessary usage, which could reduce the chance of a game running on said hardware. And most game developers nowadays don't care about it anymore. Even if you have the top-of-the-line computers, there have been games in recent years that'll make those PCs look like their juices have been pumped out 5 times in a row. They are so poorly optimized that even people who pirate games don't even bother watching their gameplay online. And it is a sign that you should either start making games with care or not make any games at all. Back in the day, during the 2000s, which was over 20 years ago, I know it sounds uncomfortable, game optimization used to be an unavoidable duty. In order to launch a game for PCs or consoles, or both, they had to make sure their games ran on the hardwares that were present back in the day. As a result, even with rough system specs, we got games that looked like this running on GPUs with megabytes of VRAM. And I can confirm this because my PC, that has some of the shittiest specs of this decade, manages to run games like Driver San Francisco, Grid, and more at a stable 30 to 60 FPS. So what the hell happened within the last 20 years? What the hell happened to game optimization? Where is game optimization? Well, I did some research, nerd style of course, going through the web, reading people's opinions, articles, etc. And I came up with some main top-of-the-line reasons behind the disappearance of game optimizations. So number 1, growing hardware capabilities. In the 2000s, PCs and consoles had weak specifications, and as a result, game devs had to optimize their game with extreme effort in order to efficiently use every bit of the system's power and still make the game look great. A perfect example would be GTA San Andreas. That game, compared to modern entries nowadays, looks small, but back in the day, it was massive. So massive that Rockstar Games had to work day and night in order to get the game running on the PS2 at solid 30 FPS. The fact that the game even opened on the PS2 is a miracle, and running it on the PS2 at 30 FPS is literal black magic. Anyways, within the past 20 years, PCs and consoles had been becoming very powerful way too quickly. And as a result, game devs slowly started to become lazy about the optimization part, as they felt like it wasn't really needed. And such behavior slowly led to this day, where game devs become lazy when it comes to optimization, hence poorly optimized games. But this is not the only reason, as there are more things that cause game performance to be dog water. And so number 2, game engines that provide too much fancy stuff but no optimization related stuff. Prime example, the goddamn Unreal Engine. Such a game engine that makes your PC unrealize itself. Anyways, Unreal Engine is known for its extremely realistic lighting and graphics that allow creation for realistic visuals in games with less effort. When used effectively, it is possible to make games with stunning visuals that can make a Gen X think it's real life. As a result, many game developers and game studios use this engine to make games with stunning visuals, as most of us take graphics over gameplay most of the time. However, many of the game devs tend to get blinded by the features of this game engine. As a result, they forget the fact that in order to make a PC or console run games with such visuals, you have to optimize your game. And since many game developers choose to slack on the optimization part, we're ultimately left with what we should call the 50-90 milkers. Yes, I seriously said that. And we have a perfect example. Borderlands 4. I haven't played it, but thank God I didn't. Because oh my god, even at low settings, it makes a 5090 want to commit hardware reset if frame generation is not used. And speaking of frame generation, why does this exist? For those who don't know, frame generation technology like DLSS or FSR are tools that can boost your game's FPS. How does it work? Simple. It uses AI to make fake frames for your games. As a result, you can make a game that runs 20 FPS on your PC run at around 60 FPS. This sounds great in general, especially for those who cannot get smooth performance in their games, but also don't have the budget to get better hardware. And just as expected, this frame gen technology also has a dark side. And I'm sure you're thinking what I'm thinking. Because of frame gen technology, game devs became even more lazy, as instead of targeting to make a game run on a system normally, they're targeting to make games run on said system normally but with frame gen turned on. As a result, these games perform horrendous without frame generation. And this is a serious issue, as nowadays, even in system spec requirements, they quietly add in small text around the minimum and recommended requirements that these were tested with frame gen turned on. If this keeps going on, then one day we will never be able to play a single game without frame generation. And I hope you can sense the importance of this issue, because just thinking about such a thing happening makes me feel dizzy. This is obvious. Game companies are greedy as hell. From EA's horrible ways to make you spend money, to Ubisoft literally not wanting you to own their games even after buying. Game companies are seemingly trying really hard to become the most hated at this point. And because of their insatiable greed, they tend to pressure game studios into making a game fast and releasing it as soon as possible. This results in game devs not getting enough time to optimize their games for release, and as a result, we get horrible performance issues with games. Game companies pressuring studios like this is common, and it can also be seen in the game industry even in the 2000s. Even back then, game companies used to pressure game studios with strict deadlines. But how did they manage to optimize their games back then? Well, because optimization was also considered back then. Game studios used to get deadlines for development and optimization, whereas nowadays game studios are pressured into releasing a game as soon as it's ready, no matter how much optimization is done. Hence, games now launch with performance issues, and players have to wait for updates in order for the performance issues to be fixed. It's not over though. It is a common issue with AAA games. Since they target for the best visuals, they tend to go on a whole different level of details. And here's the thing, 95% of the time people don't notice it, because who the hell are going to stare at puddle reflections and 4K textures while being in a serious in-game gunfight? Cat tracing, puddle reflections and stuff can be turned off, which is good, but 4K textures, unnecessary effects and objects, leftover stuff, that's the issue, because they tend to make heavy loads not on the CPU or GPU, but on the storage. Because by the love of God, I don't want to destroy 200 GB of storage just to enjoy virtual gunfights. And most of us comply like we're some sort of leashed creatures waiting to be manhandled. And finally, number 6. This is not really talked about because very few people think of it as an issue, including me, but I still feel like I should discuss about this. Us. Yes, it's also our fault, somewhat. Thanks to technological advancement, in recent years many of us have been demanding games with super realistic and accurate to real-life visuals. As a result, many game developers are now having to keep up with the demands. This ultimately makes them fully focus on the visuals, while lesser on the gameplay and least on the optimization part. And these demands ultimately fuel the first 3 reasons I've talked about in this video, even though nowadays we see more people who want games that have better gameplay and creativity involved. However, there is another side of this problem. You see, people will buy a game if it's from a popular franchise, like Call of Duty, and they will buy even if the game is shit. And the lack of enough protests and boycotts against such poorly developed games led game companies literally believing with 100% confidence that no matter what they do or make, it doesn't really matter that much, because they can earn millions every day regardless. They can fire and hire at will, they can turn renowned franchises into absolute bullshit, can completely turn a game from cool to shit, because they know at the end of the day, people will buy them and people will pay them. Although we're seeing some protests and uproars in the gaming industry nowadays, like stop killing games, I feel like it's still not enough to make the big companies rethink their choices. Those companies will pretty much likely ignore these, or at least find workarounds to maintain their vile schemes. But I don't think it's late yet. All that's needed is a good time protest and an accurate backfire. So I think these are the main reasons as to why modern games are terribly optimized. However, there's also a bonus topic for you. It's not a big issue for now, but it will be very, very soon. Hit that damn subscribe button.